We're going to kick it off with a speaker from Google, Don Dodge. He's going to be discussing the challenges, and we're going to then move on to a discussion about overcoming the challenges of device-agnostic surveys, solutions for samples migration to mobile, the evolving landscape of privacy and data protection, and then lastly, we're going to do something a little bit different this afternoon. We're going to have the introduction of the SampleCon collaboration lab tracks. It's going to focus on one of my sort of close to my heart topics, which is defining the transparency of online sample and the creation of protocols around that. So I think that's going to be a really informative activity this afternoon. So I'm going to transition it over to our first speaker this morning. I want to introduce Don Dodge. He is a developer advocate for Google. He brings more than 25 years in the software industry, including with Microsoft and Napster. I forgot about Napster. That was really cool when I was about 15 years old and I could get all this illegal music. Today he helps developers build new applications on Google's platforms and technologies. So let's welcome, oh, there he is, Don Dodge.
Thank you. It's great to be here. This is my first time at SampleCon, hopefully more. We're all in the information business. Information is gold, and we use information in different ways and monetize it in different ways and find value in it. So what I'd like to talk to you about today is the information explosion, how to embrace disruption and change, and how to move forward in a positive way. Because that disruption is going to happen whether we're ready or not. It's going to happen. So I work at Google, one of the largest information companies in the world. Our goal is to organize the world's information and make it useful, and hopefully make a little money along the way. We've been pretty successful at that, but there are always challenges and always disruptions and always new things to do. If you'd like to get in touch with me, I don't carry business cards, but I'm Don Dodge at Google, and on Twitter, I'm at Don Dodge. So at Google, we talk about moonshots, about taking huge risks and accomplishing great things. And I'll never forget when I first went to Google. I'd been there about 6 months, and my Microsoft friends are all pinging me and sending me notes and calling me and say, hey, what is this Google thing? What's it like? It seems very, very different and mysterious, and what's it really like? And I boiled it down very simply in one phrase. Achieving 60% of the impossible at Google is better than 100% of the ordinary. And that's a pretty powerful statement when you unpack it, because what that means is at Google, we're not satisfied with 10% improvements on things. That's failure. We want 10x improvements, 10 times better. And when you do that, you have to think differently. Yeah, you can't use the normal approaches to try to solve problems. Here's another example. Google does these quarterly reviews. We call them OKRs, objectives and key results. And we do them once a quarter, whereas at Microsoft, we did it once a year. So we'd measure performance once a year. At Google, we do it every 3 months, which is kind of interesting because for several reasons. One is, in 3 months' time, you recalibrate and you refocus. So you're never too far off track. So that's interesting. You get immediate feedback on what you're doing and if it's going in the right direction and course corrections. That's great. But it's also interesting because the first time I did this, I go to my manager. He says, okay, write your own objectives, write your own goals for the next 90 days. So I did. Give them to him. He says, nope, this is not going to work. I said, what do you mean? He says, it's not big enough. And I said, Mike, it's 90 days. I know what I can accomplish in 90 days. I've been at this a long time. He says, yeah, you have, but that's not good enough. I said, well, I want it to be 10 times bigger. I said, but Mike, I don't think I can accomplish 10 times this. And he said, that's the point. Because if you have to reach a goal that's 10 times bigger, you have to take entirely different approaches to solve that problem. You can't rely on the same kinds of things. It's often called thinking outside the box. But it's true. It really works. If you have to do something that's 10 times bigger, you can't rely on the normal approaches, and you have to think bigger, and you have to think about different things. So that's what's different about Google. And I love this photo here because it reminds me of taking moonshots. Earlier in my career, I was director of engineering at Alta Vista. It was the first search engine, long before Google. Anyone remember Alta Vista? Oh, good. God bless you. It was great. Alta Vista reminded me that you can do impossible things. My group invented multimedia search. So being able to search for photos and video and music. Now, this is 15 years later, and of course you can do that. It's obvious. But 15 years ago, it was impossible. Couldn't do it. And my group invented that technology, and it's still in use today at Yahoo. It taught me some interesting things about shooting for the stars and trying new things. And sometimes you fail, but you always fail forward. You always move ahead. Napster was the second company I joined, and we changed the world. The music industry was not ready for what we were trying to do. They fought against it bitterly, and they did. They succeeded in killing us, but they also shot themselves in the foot. If they had seen where the industry was going and embraced it, they could have made tens of billions of dollars. Instead, they fought the innovation and the change, and they lost tens of billions of dollars and continue to this day. If you look at the music industry 15 years ago versus where it is today, it's maybe a quarter of what it used to be. And it's because they did not see the trend. They did not embrace the change. They fought hard to hang on to their business model because it was good, it was comfortable. They were making a lot of money. And that's a common theme, actually. Winston Churchill, one of the greatest leaders ever, said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue on that matters." So the reason that's important today is when you look at Alta Vista, we were the #1 search engine in the world. We were the best. And you look at Napster, we changed the world. We were the #1 music site in the world. But success is not final. It's not at Google either. You know, we're the #1 search engine in the world. But success is not final. And every day, there are thousands of people out there, thousands of startups, who are trying to kill us, trying to beat us. So success is not final. You have to continually innovate. You have to be looking at trends and be ready to embrace change. How many people have read Clayton Christensen's book, The Innovator's Dilemma? How many of you have read that? I would recommend that all of you read this book. In 30 years, this is the best business book I have ever read. I'll save you a little bit of time to tell you what it's about. The Innovator's Dilemma is about industry leaders in the industry-leading companies failing to see the trend, failing to see the change that's coming, holding on to their existing business model and their existing products and not embracing the new change. And they do this because the new change is usually low-end, low-price, ill-defined, and almost no market, no identifiable market. So if you're the industry leader, you sort of ignore it and say, it's not interesting, it's not big enough to spend our time on, our customers are not interested in that. And that holds true for the first year or so of this trend. And then they start coming up from the bottom. And they start with the low end of the market and the underserved part of the market. And, you know, they're cheaper, faster, not as many bells and whistles. And then slowly they come up market. And after a few years, they're starting to take away your smaller customers. And after a few more years, they're taking your bigger customers. And by the time you figure out, whoa, this is a challenge, this is a problem, it's too late. You're gone. And Clayton Christensen wrote this book about the steel industry. Actually, he went across many different industries and saw the same trend happening over and over and over again. It was in the steel industry where the mini mills came in. There were these cheap little mini mills, a fraction of the size of the big, fully integrated steel mills. And they started making the lowest product, which was rebar, steel rebar that you put in concrete to make it strong. The big steel companies were not interested in that. They said, that's a low-margin business. We don't care about that. But then those little mini mills started making rolled steel. And then the big mills said, what's going on here? And they came in cheaper and faster. And long story short, they totally disrupted the steel industry. It happened in disk drives. It happened in, he looked at like 30 different businesses where it happened over and over and over again. And the common theme was the industry leaders didn't pay attention. They didn't embrace the change early enough, and they didn't react. So that's what I want to talk to you about. Change is ahead. Change is always coming. In some industries, it's slower than others, but there's always change. In our business, in the information business, technology business, change is happening every day, every month. We have to change. And if you're going to remain a leader, you have to embrace this change. You have to first recognize that it's happening, then you have to decide what you're going to do about it and move forward. Now, we're all in the information business. We all use information, maybe in different ways, but information is valuable, and the way that we use information, the way we monetize information, can change. And I would suggest that it's changing in the sample business too, and you're starting to see it. And the question is, what are you going to do? There are three types of people in the world. You ever notice there's always three types? No matter what the question is, there's always three. Well, there's three types of people in the world. The first one is people who make it happen. That's the guy on the left. And then there's those that watch it happen. Those are the ones in the middle. And these poor people on the end, they wonder what the hell happened, right? So everyone in this room is in the first group. We're the ones that make it happen, right? Yeah. So we're going to make it happen. We're not going to watch it happen, and we're certainly not going to wonder what happened. So we're the ones that are going to make it happen if we see the trend and we embrace the change. And a lot of what you're going to hear the rest of the day today is about changes that are coming and what you're going to do about it. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the talks to learn more about this industry and to see what's changing. I remember when samples and surveys looked like this. They came in the mail, and you took your pen and you filled them out. And does anyone still do that? They do, yeah. See, I'm sorry, I'm disconnected. I'm in a different world. But yeah, this is the way I guess it still is with some people. All right, well, I'm totally disconnected here. But this is the way it used to be for me and still is for a lot of people. But that's the point. That's the point I was making earlier about when change comes, it always comes from the distance and far away, and you're not paying attention to it, and you're not these mobile phones where people are clicking with their thumbs and making choices doesn't appear to be that interesting right now. And it doesn't appear to be big enough or large enough scale to matter. But watch out, because it's coming. And more people are making their votes on their smartphones and pressing their thumb. And it's super fast, and it's super cheap, and it will scale. And it could change your industry significantly. But what if sample and survey could be like this, where what you're doing is collecting information about everything that they care about? Let me back up a minute. Google started its business by building the web graph, how websites are connected to each other, which sites are most important, and how they all connect. And we built a search engine around that. And that search engine, because people use it to find things that they care about, it gave us a very good signal about what's important to them, which allowed us to target advertising very precisely, because we knew what they cared about. So that was the web graph of how things go together. Facebook came along 10 years later and invented the social graph. And that's how people are connected to each other. And you know the little like buttons and the things that you do? Those are signals about things that you like, things that you care about. Who knew that a social graph could be used to figure out what people care about and to target advertising? Who knew 15 years ago that building a web graph and a search engine would be the greatest ad targeting engine ever invented? Well, it's those sorts of things that happen, those sorts of changes that come up to surprise you that can change your business. So what if we took it one step further? Google did the web graph of how pages are connected. Facebook does the social graph of how people are connected. What if we took it one level higher and built the interest graph? It's what you care about, everything that you care about. And what if we knew all of these things about you that you care about? You've expressed interest. Now imagine what kind of sample and survey and ad targeting you could do if you knew this information. That's what we're trying to do. And I think that's where this industry is going to go. You guys are sitting on a gold mine of information. You're asking questions of people and getting answers to things that they care about. And it's a very transactional business. You get paid for completing a survey, answering a question, and you get paid and you go away. But what about all of that information? What if you kept all of that information and were able to build an interest graph and you continually learned more and more about people? What could you do with that? That could be a pretty significant change and a gold mine for you. There are about 300 million people in the United States, 320, 340 changes. But what if you could do a survey not of 300 people, but of 300 million people? What if you could get to that scale? What would change? Well, with technology today, the internet and social graph and mobile phones and smartphones, you can get to a scale that was never before possible. And you can start to learn things in detail about people, not just a sample, but the entire market. So think about what would happen if you could do a 300 million person survey versus a 300 person survey. It's possible. Someone's going to do it. We're already starting to do it in some cases, not 300 million, but very large numbers. Facebook has over 1 billion people. I think it's over 1 billion people that use it every month. So when you start to think of this problem at that scale and what kinds of things Facebook can do, or Google can do, or some other big companies can do, it could change the way we do sampling in a big way. Now, Everyone knows about GPS, right? You all have GPS to help you find where you are. I'm interested in IPS, which is indoor positioning systems. And I started investing in these companies about 5 years ago that are doing indoor position. And at the time, nobody knew what the heck it was or why it was important. But they do now, because indoor positioning is going to disrupt global positioning. Imagine, well, let me back up. GPS only works outside. And it really only works outside when you have a nice line of sight to the satellite up in the sky. You ever tried to use it in New York City, in these concrete canyons? It's really hard. So it only works outside. And most of business happens inside. Most of commerce happens inside. Retailing happens inside. So what if you could say, on the left there, the GPS says you're in the vicinity of the Mall of America. But what if you had indoor positioning and you could say, you're in the Burberry store. You're in the Burberry store and you're by the Gucci bags. Imagine having that information at scale, millions of people, what you could do with it. Targeting ads. If you're near the Gucci bags, Gucci could send you a coupon for 20% off. Or Coach could send you an ad for 50% off. Because they know you're standing right beside the Gucci bags. That's intent. Right? That Google, the reason Google is so successful is because we capture intent in the moment. When you're searching for something, we know, okay, that's important to you right now. So we're able to send an ad. The nirvana of advertising has always been the right message to the right audience at the right time. It's never before been possible to add the fourth dimension, the right place. So now imagine if you can send the right message to the right audience at the right time, and even in the right place. You're standing right in front of the product. So now you've got something that's probably 10 times more valuable than the other targeting methods. So when you think about a ridiculous kind of complicated technology like indoor positioning, it's too complicated, most people don't care about it. But when I looked at it, I thought about it in this way. What if you could use it to do targeting in a way that's never been done before? So that's the thinking outside the box. Taking things that have already been done, putting them together in a different way to be able to do something different. I think this type of thinking and this type of change is coming to the sample industry. And it's going to be amazing for people who embrace it and totally disruptive to people who don't. So you're sitting on a gold mine. That gold mine is information. You're collecting tremendous amounts of information every day. And the question is, how can you use it differently? Think outside the box about what other ways could you use this information? What other monetization schemes are there for this information? What other delivery vehicles are there? What if you could deliver your sample or your survey through a smartphone? What if you could use Facebook or other social media to get their friends to answer the questions and to understand not only the answers to the questions, but everything about those people? More than just their age and their location and their income. But what if you could understand everything about them? What they care, the TV shows they watch, their favorite artists, their favorite actors, their favorite everything. Build the interest graph. Now what could you do? How valuable is that information? So it's those kinds of things that you want to think about going forward. Try to think outside the box in a completely different way that maybe doesn't make sense at the moment, but when you see it in a larger context, it could be the disruptive thing that changes the industry. So I hope I've opened your eyes a little bit about how Google thinks about information, how the industry is thinking about information, and perhaps new ways that you could think about information, monetize it differently, and build entirely new companies going forward. I think the rest of the day we're going to explore some of these things, and it's my first time. I'm looking forward to learning more about this industry and applying some of the things I've learned at Google and Microsoft and Napster to this industry. So, thank you very much. I have time for a few questions if you have any, and if you don't, then you have more time to get on to yourself. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions from the audience? There's a gentleman walking around with a microphone.
Don't be bashful. It's okay.
There's a gentleman over there.
Hi, hi, David Shanker from Lightspeed. Don, that was great. Thanks very much for kicking off SampleCon this way. Question for you about IPS. Can you give us any examples of any applications that exist today, or any brands that may be actually utilizing some type of IPS?
Sure. There are several different ways that companies are using it. The one that might be most relevant to you is a company called Aisle 411. Aisle 411 builds these mobile applications for Walgreens, Lowe's, Target, Toys R Us, so that when you go in the store and you have their app, you can search for a product and it will take you right to the aisle where it is. Or you can search for a product and it will give you the price. Or it will show you, if you were to go into a Lowe's, if you needed to find a salesperson or a helper, on the map it will show you where they are, so you can go get them. So that's one way it's being used. Most of the companies that are using this are very secretive and don't want people to know that they're onto it yet, because they're still figuring it out themselves. But a very, very, very large retailer, like in the Fortune 10, is using it for their sales associates to be able to find supervisors. They're also using it for the stock clerks to know if you have 100,000 SKUs, different products, and they need to stock the shelves, they need to know where it goes. So they use that to tell the stock clerks exactly which aisle, which shelf to put the product in. There's another one, supermarkets. I don't know if you're familiar with slotting fees. Do you know what slotting fees are? Okay, slotting fee, for those of you who don't, slotting fees are when Procter & Gamble or any brand pays for a slot on the shelf. They want the slot on the shelf that's at eye level, and it's the best slot. They don't want the one that's way down on the floor. So, believe it or not, brands pay money to supermarkets to get the best shelf and to get the best spot. And they sell these slotting fees, they call them like 8-face or 12-face. What that means is 8 products across the front, facing out. It's bizarre, but people pay money for this. Brands pay money. So these slotting fees, they need to be able to tell the stock clerks, okay, put the Tide on the 4th shelf up and make sure that there are 12 faces facing out. And they get paid a lot of money to do that, and they lose money if they don't do it right, because people come by and check to see, did I get my 12-face slot? And if they didn't, they don't pay the money. So there are companies using it like that. They're also using it for what they call heat maps or traffic maps. So they track how people come into the store and which aisles they go down and dwell time, where they stop and look for a long time. And based on that information, they decide where they're going to put certain products. Because if they're trying to push a certain product, they're going to put it in those hot spots, traffic patterns. So they use it for all kinds of different things like that. mostly back office, internal types of things. In the future, you'll see it with consumers using it more. Imagine going to the shopping mall with your family, 2 little kids, and everybody goes in different directions, and you say, okay, let's meet at the clock in 2 hours. Well, forget that. You just look at your phone and you know exactly where they are, which store they're in. So you don't have to worry, you just know where they are. Or if you went to Disneyland, or if you go to CES or South by Southwest, and you have 10 friends there among the 50,000 people that you just don't know where they are, now you do. You can know exactly where they are inside. So there's all kinds of different uses, but those are a few that are happening now. Okay, oh, another question there.
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I work at Clorox, and I wanted to find out, are you guys keeping that data? Could you analyze it, and or is it just real time?
Are you talking about Google, or
The IPS.
Oh, the IPF. Yes, they keep it, but it's not personally identifiable, meaning they don't know that it's you, Stephanie. They just know that there were people who came into the store and came down these aisles and stayed in this. So in the aggregate, yes, they keep it because it's very valuable, and they can watch trends over time and see if the changes that they made any difference to the traffic flows or dwell time. But they don't keep it on individual people. For that, the person would have to opt in, and sometimes they will. They'll opt in to say, yes, you can use my information in return for discounts or coupons or status or whatever. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, Don.